Alright, and welcome to dividing cubic polynomials. Now guys, in our very first example, we have x cubed plus 2x squared minus 2x plus 8 divided by x minus 7. And guys, it's always so key, I should be putting all of these in parentheses. If I forget, you should be like, bad Mr. Hastings. Alright, now, let's talk through. What are our steps? Step number 1, we want to rewrite. I'm gonna say rewrite is RW, just so I can really abbreviate this. Alright, step number 1, we want to rewrite this. By the way guys, let me say this explicitly. This right here, this thing, is our dividend. So whenever I use the word dividend, you'll know that I'm talking about the thing that is to be divided. And this is our divisor. Okay, so maybe that will help you guys out when I use these phrases as we're talking through it. Okay, so when I go to rewrite this, what does that really look like? Well, I draw my long division box, and I put my dividend inside the box, x cubed plus 3x squared minus 2x plus 8, and I put my divisor on the outside of the box. Now that was step number 1 where I rewrote it. What is step number 2? Step number 2 is we want to divide our leading coefficient. Now I've been doing this in red, so let me stay consistent. Our leading coefficient is the first term of the dividend and the first term of the divisor. And so now we have x cubed divided by x. And you'll notice this is really x to the 1. And when dividing variables, we subtract the exponent. So we really have x squared. And I write that up top. Now notice for step number 3, let me just really stay consistent here. For step number 3, we're then going to multiply and subtract. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Let's use an entirely different color, orange. And I mean, I'm going to multiply this. By the way, guys, this right here, just for terminology's sake, when we divide the dividend by the divisor, it is to get the quotient. Okay, so we'll take our leading term of the quotient and we will multiply it by the divisor. So x squared times x is x cubed, and x squared times negative 7 is negative 7x squared. Now remember, this says that we will multiply and subtract, so I now have to subtract that entire expression. We're taking it away. Well, this negative changes this positive x cubed into a negative, and it changes this negative 7x squared to a positive, and once I distribute that negative, it has to go away. Now from there, x cubed plus negative x cubed is 0. That tells us we're on the right track. And 3x squared plus 7x squared is 10x squared. And my step 4, as it has always been, is to drop the next term. And so now I go ahead and I drop that negative 2x. Now from here, we are actually going to repeat steps 2 through 4 until we finish the problem. So, going back to this red, I know that my leading term of my new dividend, we can actually call this right here the new dividend, is 10x squared divided by our leading term of the divisor, x, and 10x squared divided by x is 10x. So I write plus 10x. Now using an entirely different purple, or an entirely different color, we will multiply and subtract. And so I say, okay, well 10 times x is 10x squared, and 10x times negative 7 is negative 70x. Notice though, it says to multiply and subtract. I now subtract that entire expression. Well, this negative changes my positive 10 to a negative 10. It changes my negative 70 to a positive 70. And once I distribute that negative, it goes away. 10x squared minus 10x is 0, which means we're doing the right thing here. And negative 2x plus 70x will be 68x. And of course, lastly, I drop down my last term, that plus 8. Now y'all will notice I ran out of room here, so let me clean up all of this, and I'm going to make this a little bit nicer and neater. Okay, now I've written this where I have a little bit more room to work. And so let's go ahead and say, hey, you know what? Now it's time to repeat steps 2 through 4 again. So what's the difference between cubic versus quadratic is that in this case, we're now going to repeat the process 3 times rather than 2 times. Okay, so with that being said, I go back to step 2. I divide my leading coefficients. So now I have 68x divided by x, which is clearly 68. And so we write plus 68. Now notice, I'm going to use an even newer color, and when we multiply and then subtract, well, we have 68 times x, which is 68x, and we have 68 times negative 7. At this point, guys, I'm going to need a calculator. So I would say this, as you go longer and further into the division here, you're going to get higher and higher and higher numbers. So we have 68 times negative 7, which will be negative 476. Now remember, to multiply and subtract, we now subtract that entire polynomial expression. Changes this positive 68x into a negative 68x, and changes this negative 476 into a positive. And once we distribute that negative, we take it away by making it positive. Now 68x minus 68x is 0, and 8 plus 476 will actually give us 484. And since there's nothing more here, there's nothing more to drop, we say that we now have a remainder of 484 over our original divisor of x minus 7. Now recall two things. One, this is what we call the quotient. Alright, it's the quotient. And also, since there's a remainder, this was not a factor. So if there is a remainder, then that is not a factor. Now let's move on to our second example. Okay, let's go on with example number 2. Now for example number 2, we have x cubed minus 5x squared plus 6x minus 9, and we're going to divide this by x minus 3. And let's go ahead and write our long division box. So we can go ahead and take our dividend, x cubed minus 5x squared plus 6x minus 9, and we'll put our divisor, x minus 3, on the outside. So that was step number 1, where we rewrote the problem. Now remember, step number 2, we want to go ahead and divide our leading coefficients. So I'll do x cubed divided by x, which will give us x squared. And of course I write that up top. Now this is the leading coefficient of my quotient, and so of course I take this now and I re-multiply this back into the divisor. X squared times x gives me x cubed. X squared times negative 3 gives me negative 3x squared. And remember, we were always going to subtract that expression away from our original dividend. Now from here, this negative makes this positive into a negative, and this negative into a positive. And once we switch these signs, we can now combine our like terms. X cubed minus x cubed is 0. Negative 5x squared plus 3x squared is negative 2x squared. And of course, I drop my last term, that plus 6x. From here, I repeat step number 2. I divide my leading coefficient, negative 2x squared, divided by x, which is in fact negative 2x. And so we'll write negative 2x right there. And let's switch up colors. Let's say now we multiply negative 2x times x, which is negative 2x squared, and negative 2x times negative 3, which will give us positive 6x. Now from here, remember, we always have to subtract that new expression away, and this negative changes our negative to a positive, our positive to a negative, and once it's distributed, it's gone. Now negative 2x squared plus 2x squared is 0, and 6x minus 6x, oh wait a second, this is interesting, that is 0 as well, and so it would say that those things cancel out entirely. Very strange. Now once that happens, I drop down my negative 9, and let's see, I would then say, well, wait a second, negative 9 as my leading term divided by x doesn't really make sense, and so we just say that we have now a remainder of negative 9 over x minus 3. Since those can't be divided out, that must be our remainder. Alright guys, I hope that that helps, and I'll catch y'all in our next video. Actually, just kidding. I didn't mean to say that. We have one more example. just in case you need a little bit more help with this. Okay, and here's our example 3. Sorry for the confusion there at the end of that last problem. I was just taken aback that that canceled out so nicely there at the end. Alright, so let's go on to example 3. Let's do our step number 1. We're going to go ahead and rewrite. I draw my long division box where I put 2x cubed minus 8x squared plus 6x plus 10. And from here, I'll put my divisor 2x minus 6 on the outside. Now, let's go ahead and start running through this. We know that we're going to start by dividing our leading coefficients. So I have 2x cubed divided by 2x. And you'll notice 2 divided by 2 is 1, and x cubed divided by x is x squared. So I'll go ahead and write x squared. Now from here, I multiply the leading term of my quotient by the two terms of the divisor, and x squared times 2x is 2x cubed, and x squared times negative 6 is negative 6x squared. We'll notice here that we are going to be subtracting away that expression, and the negative changes this positive to a negative, and this negative to a positive, and then it goes away. 2x cubed plus negative 2x cubed is 0, and negative 8x squared plus 6x squared is negative 2x squared. And then I drop my plus 6x. Now from here, we are going to repeat the process entirely. I take my leading coefficients, that negative 2x squared, and I divide it by my leading coefficient of 2x, and negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1, and x squared divided by x is x. So I'll write negative x up top. Now switching colors, I will do negative x times 2x, which is negative 2x squared, and negative x times negative 6, which will be plus 6x. Oh, it looks like we're going to have another weird one here. I don't know how I'm doing these by making these up, but when we subtract it, our negative becomes a positive, and this also becomes a negative. And so once we've distributed it, well, negative 2x squared plus 2x squared is 0, and 6x plus negative 6x is 0, and so now I just drop down this 10. Well, if I were to do my leading coefficient here, 10 divided by 2x, nothing's really canceling. We'll just say that this is plus 10 over 2x minus 6. That is our remainder. And so since it has a remainder, we would say then that this is not a factor. Alright, thank y'all so much, and I will see y'all in our next lesson.